Okay, so in this video we are going to talk about diastasis recti. It again is super common with pregnancy and is a little bit of a separation of your abdominals through midline here. So quick explanation about your abdominals or your core. You've got your deep core muscles, which are the ones we've been talking about a lot. So your transverse abdominis, which is your core set, your pelvic floor, which is lifting up, and your diaphragm, which is helping you breathe. And then you've got a couple muscles along your back, your multifidus, which are also deep core muscles. Then you have your more superficial core muscles. They're the ones that help you do the quicker movements. I call them your sprinter muscles. So if your other muscles are your marathon muscles, they help sustain certain postures all day, like sitting or standing. These are the ones that you are going to use when you're leaning down to pick something up, or even getting out of bed. So these muscles are your obliques. They wrap around like this and they help with twisting. And then you have your six-pack abs, or your rectus abdominis. So those are what most people think of when you think of your abdominals. With the diastasis recti, what it is you have this line called your linea alba, which is basically like, imagine a zipper. It is right from your belly button and your pubic bone all the way up to your rib cage. It's where the muscles meet in the middle. It's a bit of connective tissue that during pregnancy, as the belly grows, can get stretched. It's normal to get stretched. It'll get stretched on everybody. Within 6 weeks after delivering the baby, most of the time it comes back together and there's no problems. Sometimes you can get a little bit of separation there longer term. We may not actually fix the separation. You may have it forever, but it doesn't mean it needs to negatively affect your life or anything that you're doing. The biggest thing here is learning how to control the tension across that midline, so across that linea alba. How we check for it and how you can check for it at home is you can check for it yourself, or you can have someone that you trust check for you, and they can play the role that I'm going to play. So to check for it, Michelle's going to keep her knees bent. She's going to place her hands behind her head. And then what I'm going to do as the person checking is I'm going to find her belly button. And then I'm going to keep my fingers flat. I'm going to take 2 or 3 fingers and I'm going to place them just above the belly button, and I'm going to feel all the way up to that little notch where her ribs start. I'm not going to tell Michelle any cues. I'm not going to tell her to think about anything specifically. I'm just going to get her to lift her head, neck, and shoulders up, and I slightly push down and can come back down. So what I felt there is I felt about 1 finger kind of push down or sink between these two muscles, sorry. And that is showing me a little bit of diastasis, so a little bit of separation between those abdominals. So I'm going to get her to do that again and again, and I'm going to start to feel down, and I'm slowly feeling good. You can come back down. I'm slowly feeling up and down above her belly button, around her belly button, and then below her belly button. You can come back down, all the way down to her pubic bone, lift up again. And you're going to notice the tension is going to be different, come back down, in each place. So for her specifically, there's a little bit more of a gap up above her belly button. It gets a little bit better around her belly button, and then it's actually very good. I don't really feel a gap at all lower down. You could have a gap in just one little area. You could have a gap of tension along the whole thing, or you could have a gap along just parts of it, or none of it. So if you do have a gap, that's diastasis recti, and we're going to talk about how to control that tension along midline. So again, we may not actually fix it. We may not long-term keep those muscles connected, but what we can do is create tension across midline so that that space doesn't cause any problems. So Michelle, what I want you to do here is I'm going to get you to think about a couple things. I'm going to think about you lifting up the pelvic floor, so lifting up either that pea, that blueberry, or that marble that we've talked about. Then I'm going to also get you to think about bringing your hip bones together. So this is more of a subtle movement. Yeah, don't tuck your hips though, good. So it's just about 50% of what you could fully contract. And I'm going to get you to just work on those to start, good, and then relax. Good. And then I'm going to get you to also think about bringing your ribs towards your hips. So you're going to close that space here. What this does is that creates the best way to get that tension across midline so that those deep core muscles are providing you strength across that whole midline so that when you do lift your head, neck, and shoulders for something like getting out of bed or lifting up into a sit-up, that you're not going to get a separation between those two abdominal walls. Okay, so Michelle, I'm going to get you to take a deep breath in. As you exhale, I want you to just think about lifting the pelvic floor and lift your head, neck, and shoulders. Good, and come back down. So for there, I did feel that there's still a little bit of tension or a little bit of gapping or a little bit of softness in between the muscles. So we're gonna add on, Michelle, I'm gonna get you to breathe out. You're gonna lift the pelvic floor, bring the hip bones together and back down. Good. And this time I felt that she domed. So she did like a bit of a doming up. That's another symptom or another thing you can check for the diastasis. If you do a sit-up and you don't have someone to check and see if there's a little space in between, if you're doing an exercise class or you're doing our workouts and you notice that there's a doming or kind of like a mountain happening at some point of your belly, that could be the diastasis. So a diastasis is really a herniation. It just has a bit of a different name because it's related to pregnancy specifically. So we're going to control that a little bit more. So this was good, Michelle, with the Kegel and the hip bones coming together with the TA. Now I also want you to think about bringing your ribs down to your hips, and then you're going to lift the head. So you're going to really get that core active and knitting in and together, and then lift up and there and come back down. Okay, so perfect. So I know you can't feel this, but what I'm feeling is I'm feeling that when Michelle did that, yes, there was still a little bit of a gap between those abdominals, but the tension across that midline was perfect. So I was feeling a little bit of a spring back or a trampoline when I pushed my fingers down. That's exactly what you want. So let's do that one more time. Good. And back down. Perfect. So this is one way to do it in that little mini sit-up. The other way to do it is with your knees in tabletop. So Michelle, you can bring your hands down by your sides. Perfect. And then let your feet come down first. I want you to control your core first. So actually when you did that, I did notice a little bit of doming. What we're gonna do is control that. So you're gonna take your deep breath in. You're gonna find your Kegel. Think hip bones together, ribs together and down. Okay, now lift one foot up to float, the other foot up. Good. Hold it. Bring this leg back down and bring the other leg back down. Good. Breathe in, let everything relax. We're going to do that again. You're going to exhale. Think lift up the Kegel, hip bones together, ribs to hips. Good. Float one foot up. Let's go this foot first. Good. And then the other side. And I'm feeling along midline. I'm not feeling any drop. Drop down with this leg. Drop down with this leg. So this is a really good exercise. I would set a timer for about 2 minutes. I would try a few with the lifting the head, neck, and shoulders, and then I would try a few about another 2 minutes with the toe taps up and down. You may only be able to do just floating one foot, so just lift your heel here, Michelle. Nope, so foot goes back down, just the heel. There we go. So this is the first step. Second step would be lifting the foot, and then the third step is coming into that tabletop. Once you can do that on one side, you're gonna add on the second leg. Perfect. And the big control piece is you're going to control it back down and not let this tension along midline change. Great. So those are some really good tips on how to control diastasis recti.